So, yes, this is a talk about the life lessons that I've learned from distance running. However, I am going to say that this talk is not necessarily about distance running. So, I do appreciate your concern for my knees, and I may appreciate the fact that you are only running if something is chasing you. But we can ignore those things because this is not actually about distance running. It's about life. So I was not always a distance runner or even an athlete. I actually, my senior year of high school, I stopped dressing for phys ed. And the school called my mother and told her, and she came to me and said, well, the school called and said, you've stopped dressing for phys ed. Why is it that you've stopped dressing for phys ed? And I said, well, Mom, I've dressed for phys ed and I've taken enough phys ed classes that I need to pass phys ed. So I'm not dressing for phys ed anymore. I'm finished with that. See, I was under the assumption that there was somewhere to go, somewhere to be, somewhere to get to, and life was a ladder and I was climbing the rungs and I was not there yet. So for me, phys ed was just another rung on the ladder. Like if I was just going to climb up the ladder and I was just going to tick another box, and then I was going to graduate from high school, and then I was going to go to college, and then I was going to get a job, and then I was going to climb the ladder at that job, and then I was going to take over that company, and eventually I would get to the place that is there. There. That beautiful place that we're all trying to go there, the exoneration where everything is rainbows and butterflies, and there. Except that if you haven't noticed yet in your life, the needle for there keeps moving. Western society is very endpoint driven. There is an endpoint. We have to get to it. We are not there. And it wasn't until I became a distance runner. I'm a marathon runner. I run full marathons, 26.2 miles, in my 30s, in my early 30s, that I started discovering things that were much more based in wisdom, things that really accounted for what it was to live a reasonable life. And it was very different than what I learned in Western standardized education. So I want to share a few of those lessons today. And the first one was that the joy is in the process. You might ask the question, well, don't you run to cross a finish line? Some people do. Yeah. Some people run to achieve a goal. And then they cross that finish line and they get a jolt of euphoria that's followed by a low of depression. It's kind of like eating a really good meal, and all of a sudden your regular steamed broccoli doesn't taste very good anymore because you've had that high and then the low. People who continue to run and run daily do it for reasons that are similar to playing a piece of music or dancing. We don't play a piece of music to get to the end of the song, and we don't dance to get to the end of the dance. There's something beautiful about the ritual of going out in the morning and smelling the air and putting on your shoes and thump, 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 thump. Now, now, now. Every step is this moment. It's a beautiful thing, and eventually you realize that your physical composition doesn't let you go any further. You can't continue to go further in distance running. You can't continue. It's there, you tap out at a certain limit. So you just do it anyway. You thump, 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 thump. You can only be where you are. Now, there's a phenomenon that when I became a runner, people started doing to me, and I used to do it. They would say things to me like, I ran 2 miles today. I know that's nothing for you, but. And I would say, stop that. Because in distance running, we celebrate everybody at all abilities. It is the only place that I've ever encountered in Western society where you don't lead with your perceived inadequacy. And people that are further ahead don't discount people that are behind. We actually celebrate the back of the pack more so than the elites because those people are here. They're showing up. They don't have the fitness yet. They're crying, they're hurting. But you can only be where you are. Um, I learned that from a woman named Sabrina Stanley. She was my manager at Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. She had just DNF'd in a 100-mile race at mile 85, and now she's sponsored athlete for Adidas. And the last time I spoke to her, had won 14 out of her last 15 ultras, the only male or female to win Grand Rage. She's come in first place in Hard Rock 100. This is a woman that looked at me and said, don't discount your 5 miles. That's where you are. When I started running, Roadrunners Club of America says it takes 5 to 10 runs of an hour or more to acclimatize to heat. It took me 3 years. It takes 5 to 10 miles of an hour or more to acclimatize to heat when you're an experienced runner. When you were a sedentary person that was almost 200 pounds and smoked for 18 years and was hanging off a bar stool every night until 4 o'clock in the morning, it takes 3 years. Your cardiovascular system takes off first. Your musculoskeletal system takes forever and a day. So when I started my business, people love to say to me, well, how many clients do you have? Well, how much money are you making? And I'm like, it's been 3 months. Calm down, Tiger. I didn't have a professional career before I started my business. So I didn't have a professional network that was built for 30 years when I started my business. So I had to build that professional network. And much like I got to understand that there were processes happening in my body when I started running distance, there were processes that were happening in my business when I started my business. The people that were talking to each other, that I didn't know about, just like the cells that were functioning inside, the efficiencies that were happening. It was happening. I trusted that it was happening because I was a distance runner. I didn't look at what was here and say, well, this isn't working out. I just trusted. Trust. You can't microwave mastery. In order to get where the master is, you have to walk the path the master has walked. My next lesson is about goals, because we do set goals. Business is a goal, even though Western society is endpoint driven and now is the only moment, we set goals. We have things that we want to do. When I was running the 2021 New York City Marathon, I followed the 3:45 pacer for 16 miles. I lost them at some point. I finished in nearly 3:51, still a good pace. And the New York City Marathon has several different starting points, and the pacers come together at a point. And when those pacers came together, one was on the top of the Verrazano Bridge, one was on the bottom. They came together, and one said, well, what time do you have? And the other said, I've got an hour and 15 minutes. And he goes, no, 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 seconds. They were trying to organize if one had to go back or one had to go forward. And I looked at my watch, and I had been running for 1:16, which means that even if I stayed with those pacers the entire way, I would still finish a minute slower. I mean, I would finish at 3:46, not 3:45, which made me realize that they started at a different point than I did. Not everyone in life has the same starting point for anything that you want to do. Someone who grew up in poverty does not have the same start line as someone who grew up with affluence. A person of color in America does not have the same start line as a Caucasian person. Somebody that's had a divorce doesn't have the same start line as somebody that's happily married for 30 years. Somebody that was beaten by a spouse does not have the same start line as somebody that was not assaulted. And yet we think we all had we started at the same place. We're going to the same place, but we don't. We don't all have the same start line for anything. Be where you are. Be here now. Honor your process. I want to talk about slowing down to speeding up, which is lesson number 4. When you're a distance runner, 80% of your running should be slow because of a lot of that adaptation that I was talking about when I was talking about you can only be where you are. So when you're running, most of your fitness adaptation happens at a conversational aerobic pace. So your mitochondrial density improves, your oxygen circulation improves, your muscle fiber conversion improves. All of these things improve. But new runners don't want to believe that. They want the proof in the pudding on the plate at present. They want it now. I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see it. So because they want to see it, they screw themselves out of being able to have it. I trained for a marathon last fall at the same time as this other person that I know. We were both going for 3:40, like 3:45, 3:30. Neither of us did it. I finished at 3:53. He finished at 4:10. I did all my training at about a 10-minute pace. He did his at 8:30. I am completely uninjured. He has a pelvic fracture, 2 torn labrums, and I can't even tell you how many injuries that he's still dealing with to this day. You can't destroy your body every single day. And much like things in life, we need to slow down to speed up. Most of our advancement happens when we're in states of alpha and theta. It doesn't happen in our logical, analytical mind. We all have so much to do, so we're many places that we've got to go. We're thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. You got to give that brain a rest. You connect to the creative forces in the universe when you slow down. When you are in here, it's not happening. You will go faster when you go slower. Another thing that I have learned is the art of paradox. I ran a race last summer, spring actually, and it was called the Mini 10K. It was the first women's only road race. It was formed in 1972, and for it I was in the very front, like because I was fast for a girl. And I was proud of myself. I was in A corral, and when I first started running, I was in the back. I was in K, and I had worked really hard. And I PR'd that race personal record by 1 second. It was a fantastic race. It was my fastest time in the 10K, 46:48. I wrote a piece about it, and my friend Jim sent me a message and he said, I still don't know how your race went. Like you said all these things, but you also said like you could have done better. And I was like, yeah, I could have done better. I absolutely could have done better. And, as Wayne Dyer says, paradoxical thinking is embedded into Eastern concepts like yin and yang and the masculine and the feminine. But in the West, by contrast, we view those things as incompatible opposites. One of my favorite entrepreneurs, Simone Soul, says the capacity to hold a paradox is the sign of a grown-up mind. Consistency is the key to success. It's also the path to burnout. Both are true. Loving your body as it is necessary. And also, you shouldn't just willy-nilly accept the fact that you're morbidly obese. Both are true. Like, both are true. These are not incompatible opposites. They don't have to be a battle. When I ran the Chicago Marathon last year, it was the day after the war broke out, the Israel-Hamas war. And I was so grateful and pleased and happy and honored to be running with people from all over the world in the same race at the same time. And I was angry because I was in pain. I'm running a marathon. I'm irritated. There are crowds. I'm annoyed. Both are true. Best 10K I ever ran. I could have done better. Both are true. Both are true. I want to tell you my final lesson for what I've learned from distance running, and it's probably the most powerful. And I want to share why I started running. I started running for mental health. So in this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it really taking care of your body is a pathway to better mental health. Like there is no arguing that. But really, why I started racing, my first race was a half marathon, was because I was dating a man. And this man told me that his wife had ex-wife, important detail. His ex-wife had just finished a 5K, and he was very proud of her. And I thought to myself, I've run 3.1 miles in my life. What I would really love is to be able to run a half marathon, because I want you to be proud of me. Like, I want you to be proud of me. And so I trained, though I was heavy. I was trained that I was unhappy with my body. I trained in the heat when I couldn't sweat, when my heart rate would go above 180 because all that adaptation had not happened yet. I trained despite my alcoholism that kept me awake and drunk until whatever time. I trained even though I still was smoking cigarettes and it was hard to breathe. I trained. And it was the Staten Island Half Marathon at the tail end of 2017. And towards the last couple miles of the race, you come around the water. And it was past mile 11, which is the furthest I had ever run in my entire life at that point, up until that point. And this feeling came over me of, I am going to do this. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And it was at that point, and only that point, that I understood what it meant to love myself. And I don't mean in that stupid way that people go, "Oh, gonna love yourself." Yeah, you can say that 100 million times. If it's up here, it's always gonna be met with doubt, but that feeling infected my entire body. And I finished and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I told this story late last year at actually my now sister-in-law's bridal shower. I told the story. And someone at that shower asked me, "Was he proud of you?" Meaning my ex. I said, "It didn't matter. I didn't care. I didn't care if he was proud of me. It didn't matter." And that feeling, that connection, that divine connection is the reason why I thump, 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 thump. That connection to something larger, that connection to myself, thump, 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 thump. And so I want to use this as a springboard for discussion, and I have some questions. But first, I do want to recite a quote, which is from Mary Schmidt. It was in the Chicago Tribune. Baz Luhrmann made it popular in his song "Everybody's Free to Wear Sunscreen," and the quote is, "Don't waste your time on jealousy. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long, and in the end, it's only with yourself."